It all started because I had to go to the bathroom. I was on my way home after having worked a double, and if I had just gone before I left work, it wouldn't have been a problem. I was in such a hurry to get home because I knew I was going to have to go back and do it again in 8 hours. My relief had called out about 30 minutes before my shift ended, and though the manager was sympathetic, he said I had to stay unless I could find someone to work for me. 8 hours later, I staggered out the front door and into my car so I could go home and pass out in time to do it again tomorrow. I was about halfway home when I was struck with the overwhelming urge to use the bathroom. It wasn't one of those, you can hold it, kind of warnings. It was a, you are going to pee in the toilet or pee in your pants, but you only have about 2 minutes or so to pull the trigger on that decision. Kind of warnings. I was about 20 minutes from home, and every place I passed on the way was dark and locked up for the night. I had just about decided to pull over to the side of the road when I saw the comfortable glow of a Dollar General sign in the distance. I pulled in, figuring if it was actually open, I'd use their bathroom, and if not, I'd just go behind the building. It was about 10:30 at night, and I was surprised when I saw that the open sign was lit up. The sign was a little different too, not the usual Dollar General logo, and as I got closer, I saw that I had pulled into a Dollar General Beyond. It wasn't a type of Dollar General I was familiar with, but beggars could hardly be choosers. I heard the comfortable ding of the automatic door as I walked inside, and it put me at ease. The personal speakers that some manager had rigged into the sound system were playing soft rock from one of the local stations, and the overhead fluorescents flickered and crackled in a way that makes you think they were just about to go out. The doors closed behind me with an almost ominous thump, but I shook it off as my bladder throbbed again. I found a tired-looking blonde woman standing behind the counter, and she seemed barely coherent. She didn't even look at me when I walked in, and when I asked for the bathroom key, she turned her head minutely and offered me a fluorescent pink fly swatter with a key hook to the bottom. I nearly ran to the bathroom, slipping the key in as I opened the door, and paused in confusion. I opened the door to find another Dollar General. It was the same as when I went in. The same stagnant soft rock played over the speakers. The same fluorescent buzzed overhead. The same tired salt and pepper fake linoleum scuffed underfoot. I was a little mesmerized as I stepped inside, the feeling of vertigo momentary but awful as I let the door snap shut behind me. My need to pee was forgotten as I looked around, and I would be too distracted to remember it for a while. There were only 2 differences between this Dollar General and the one I had stepped out of. One was the disappearance of the blonde woman. I had thought maybe I had just gotten turned around somehow, just a tired trick of the mind until I walked up to the counter. The woman was gone, but it wasn't something that seemed odd right away. She had probably gone into the office to count the drawers so she could go home, and I rang the bell on the desk as I called for help. I rang it a dozen or so times, calling loudly for someone, but no one ever came out. I jumped the counter then, but the office behind it was empty. I checked the back, checked every aisle, but they were empty too. The second difference was that all the doors out of the store were locked and refused to budge. It was getting too weird by now, and I really wished I had just peed behind the store. I went to the doors and pushed it on them, looking for a lock or something, but there was nothing on the smooth surface. There was no mechanism to unlock the door either. The door was simply unmoving. I went into the back, meaning to go out the back door, but that door was also locked. After about 30 minutes of looking for a key or some way out, I sat down on the counter and decided that maybe I'd been locked in for the night. The blonde had looked half brain dead and had probably just left suddenly and locked me in. If she had, then why leave the lights and the music on? I pondered it for a few minutes, but eventually, I just shrugged and decided to call the police so they could come get me. I didn't want one of the cops to drive by on a routine patrol and think I was stealing. What's more, I had to be back at work before Dollar General opened up. My boss was not going to be happy if I was late and was unlikely to believe I was trapped in a Dollar General. So I took out my cell phone, but when I dialed 911, all I got was weird static. I dialed a few more numbers, but each time I did, the static got louder and angrier, and eventually I stopped trying. The 5G, however, still worked, so I guess that's lucky for you guys. I decided that if I couldn't reach them, I would at least tell them what was going on. I opted to make a sign so that if someone saw me, they wouldn't think I was here robbing the place. So I set about looking for something to make a sign with, and luckily for me, it was a Dollar General. About 2 minutes later, I had a sign made out of construction paper taped to the door, letting them know that I was stuck in here and needed help. After that, I stepped away from the door and tried to decide what to do now. My bladder groaned again, and I remembered why I had stopped here in the first place. I opened the door to the bathroom, and hey, wouldn't you know it, but there was another Dollar General in there. I must have opened the bathroom door and stepped through about 4 times before I just decided to go in the water fountain. My business completed, I decided to have a bite. I walked around, finding some cold sandwiches and chips, a soda, and a little ice cream, and took it to the front. The self-checkout wouldn't work, so in the end, I just left some money on the counter and figured I'd pay the difference when they opened tomorrow. As I sat eating, the food balanced in my lap as the law chair I'd found allowed me to eat off something other than the floor. I found myself feeling oddly uncomfortable. This wasn't the kind of place you were supposed to eat in. It was tantamount to camping in a car wash, and it felt like something was watching me as I munched my food. I had set up near the door, and as I found my eyes straying back to it again and again, I noticed something else strange. I was next to a pretty busy road, and approaching midnight or not, I should have seen headlights of some kind by now. We were right beside a pretty busy highway, and the idea that not so much as a log truck of a delivery vehicle had cruised by all night was very strange. It was then that I noticed, after looking back at the door for about the 10th time in 2 minutes, that my sign was gone. I left my food in the chair, thinking maybe it had fallen down, but it was nowhere to be found either. The tape I had used to stick it up there, the markers I had left on the counter, even the package of poster board was gone. I walked around saying hello again, thinking someone had come and found my mess before cleaning it up, but I was still alone in the store. I made a new sign and hung it up in the window, and as I returned to my slightly melted ice cream, I kept looking back at it. I looked at it mistrustfully, waiting for it to disappear again, but it stayed stuck to the door just as the last one had. Until it had suddenly gone missing, that was. After finishing my little dinner, I grabbed some bedding from an end cap near the middle of the store and some chair pads from the same area. I figured I wouldn't get more than a few hours before someone came in and asked what the hell I thought I was doing, and settled in to get some sleep. I tried to send a text to my boss to let him know what was going on, but the text just sat there unsent. I sighed and closed my eyes, getting comfy as I tried to fall asleep. I nodded off eventually and woke up 10 hours later to much the same scene. I was a little concerned when I looked at my phone and saw what time it was, but I was even more concerned when I realized the sun still wasn't up. No one had tried to call me, and no one had arrived to ask me what the hell I was doing, and that was when I sat down to write this. As I said, the 5G seems to work very well, but I can't so much as make a phone call from my phone. The outlets seem to work as well, and there are plenty of chargers here to keep my phone from dying. I don't seem to be in any danger of starving either. I have food, water, and power, but no way out. I don't know how long I can stay here or wherever I am, but it appears I have found something incredible and inescapable. It's funny, my friends and I used to joke about the number of Dollar Generals in any given place. They always seem to get closer and closer to each other, and I once made a joke about how one day I'd turn down an aisle and find myself in a completely different Dollar General. Enter the back area, a new Dollar General location. Fall through a hole in the floor, you drop right into a newly constructed Dollar General. We'd laugh about it over our beers, but it seems a lot less funny now. I'll keep you all posted. I suppose this would count as my first day in Dollar General Beyond, and I'll let you know if I discover anything new. If you come across one, I cannot stress enough to avoid Dollar General Beyond at all costs. If you do, for God's sake, don't enter the bathroom. There are forces at work that I don't think anyone understands. The doors are still locked and I can't see anything out of the windows. There may be things out there, but they seem content to ignore me or are unaware that I'm here. The doors in the back are also unmoving, and I looked for something big to break the front windows with, but that only solidified rule number 2. They found a lug wrench in the automotive section, but it simply bounces off the glass and doors. It doesn't seem to damage them, nothing beyond little dents. And I finally just gave up when I got tired. While I was laying on the floor, my chest working like an accordion, I noticed the ceiling. I scampered to the back and found a ladder near the wall that they probably used for changing out the ceiling tiles and took it to the floor so I could climb into the ceiling. I thought that if I could make a hole in the roof, it's just a green metal roof, I could get out and see where I was. I took some cutting implements and got the biggest ladder I could find in the back, but as I slid one of the ceiling tiles aside, I saw not an attic space, but a giant pulsating void. I reached a hand out to it, but I couldn't bring myself to touch it. It was as if something was repelling me, and after standing up there for a few minutes or hours, or however long I was on that ladder, I climbed down and put it away. I try not to think about it if I can help it. I've started doing things in the store to keep my mind busy, and they've sort of colored my days. If day 1 was figuring things out and day 2 was getting settled, then day 3 was when I sat down to color. I had meant to go get some mouthwash when I saw the rack of color books on the stationery aisle. There were all kinds of coloring books, Avengers and princesses, dinosaurs and sea creatures, and before I knew it, I had a pack of colored pencils opened and was filling the pages. I spent most of that day coloring in animals of various kinds, or superheroes, or the intricate designs in the adult coloring books. Heck, I colored in some of the regular books too, and I grabbed a couple of the more interesting ones to read off the spindle rack at the end of the aisle. On day 4, I set about building as many of the Lego sets that were on the toy aisle as I could. You wouldn't imagine that a Dollar General would have a lot of them, but I spent the better part of 12 hours putting Legos together. Spaceships, dinosaurs, buildings, vehicles. I assembled them all and began flying or driving them around the floor half-heartedly. By the end of the day, I was just throwing them at the front door and watching them smash to pieces. I told myself it was to make it harder for anything coming in, but I really just liked the way they went to pieces when they hit the glass. Day 5 was spent cooking and making crafts. I used the gas stoves they sell to cook a few dishes from the cookbooks, and I even ate a few of them. I had found a cookbook on the shelf and had the ingredients for most of the dishes, so I figured why not give it a try. After that, I built a bunch of the crafts on the craft aisle, inflated some of the inflatable pool toys and had a tea party with them, and really just kinda had fun. This was honestly a time of relaxation for me more than anything. I had worked myself to the bone for years, and the ability to just kind of exist was nice for a change. I had been sent home for about 2 months with pay during COVID, and the longer I stayed here, the more I realized I missed it. I missed getting paid to exist, doing things I liked, and just having fun. It wasn't actual fun though, I guess. It was more like when you're a kid at daycare and waiting for your mom to pick you up while you play with their toys. It all came to a head on the 6th day. I woke up excited to find something else to do, but the longer I looked, the less I found to do. I put on some clothes from the clothing section, but I couldn't find anything that was my size. I found some pants that were too big and a shirt that was too small, and threw them both on the floor as I just decided to keep my old clothes from yesterday. I went to the toy aisle, but nothing caught my eye, and after stepping on a Lego truck with my bare foot, I went to find some shoes. I then went to make some breakfast, but I was kind of over it. I settled for grilled cheese before going to find something to occupy myself. Most of the crafts were built, most of the books were colored or read, and I was struggling to find something to keep my mind occupied. I found one of those old plug-in games, the kind you plug into a TV and play games on, but I couldn't find a TV to attach the cords to. I went to bed that night feeling frustrated and realized some of the magic was gone from my sanctuary-turned-prison cell. Then on day 7, okay, this sounds a little childish, but I got fed up and went around wrecking things. It started with something small. I woke up with a pain in my neck, surrounded by inflatable toys, and went to go get a coffee drink. I stank. I could smell myself after not having showered in 5 days, and decided I might try to set up a camp shower. I was still hoping to wake up and discover that this was some kind of dream I was having, but the longer it went on, the less sure I was. So I went to get the coffee drink, a Starbucks mocha frap, from the cooler, but they were out. I didn't remember drinking the last one, but I guess I must have. There was a whole row of French vanilla beside it, but suddenly that made me even angrier. I didn't want French vanilla. I didn't want microwave toasters cooked in the microwave I'd found in the break room, and I didn't want to be stuck in a Dollar General with no one to talk to anymore. I took one of the French vanilla drinks, stepped back, and hurled it through the glass front of the refrigerator. It shattered, spilling glass and coffee all over the floor, and made another discovery right then. Number 3. That felt really good. I did it again, and again, and again. When I ran out of glass, I threw a few at the front door, but it didn't break. After that, I went on a rampage through the aisles. I smashed all my crafts, threw all my Legos, popped my inflatable friends with scissors or knives or just by jumping on them, tossed soda bottles, watched the tops burst as they went flying, and basically had a tantrum that would befit any child under 6. When I was done, I lay in the wreckage, making snow angels in a pile of chips I had poured out, and as I panted heavily, I felt a little better. I had pushed over a few of the shelves as well, and between 2 of them, the slant they made seeming to form an arrow, I saw something else I had done. In my chaos, something had hit one of the ceiling tiles, and now all that blackness could be seen. I started to worry about that, but it was burnt away in the face of my newfound adrenaline. I climbed onto the 2 shelves, shifting a little as they groaned mutinously, and looked into that void. It was still just hanging up there, motionless overhead, and I grabbed something from the top of the fallen shelf and tossed it towards the space. I didn't write down what it was, but I guess it doesn't matter because it never came out of that space again. I grabbed something else, had reared back to fling again, but I stopped halfway through my throw. Something about that darkness made me very uneasy. The way it moved after I'd tossed something into it made it seem angry. I know how that sounds. How can darkness seem angry? But it did. It seemed to watch me as I prepared to throw, daring me to let it fly and see what happened. I let whatever it was fall to the ground and went down to get ready for bed. I was tired, exhausted from my day of destroying my prison, and I decided to drag my bedding under the shelves I had dropped together. 1, it made it feel like I had shelter, and 2, it was the cleanest part of the floor with the least crap on it. 3, I guess, was that if it all collapsed on top of me, at least I wouldn't be stuck here. I had scratched that last part out of my journal, but I think it's important to have it now. It speaks a lot to my state of mind. I must have dozed off for a little bit because when I came awake, I was surprised to see that something had changed. The store was completely dark. The store lights had never gone off in the week that I had been here. Not unless they went off after I went to sleep, and the new dark was highly unsettling. I wondered if that was what had woken me up, but as the shelves groaned again, I realized it had been something else. Whatever that something else was, it was now perched on top of my makeshift structure. For the first time in a week, I had something else here with me, and the knowledge made my blood run cold. I was under a big pile of blankets and inflatables that I had dragged here, and I snuggled down beneath them like a kid when he thinks there's a monster in his closet. I heard it moving around, heard it making its careful way off the shelves and across the mess I had created. The way it moved made me believe it was huge and hunkered to fit in the space, but I refused to peek and see what it was. It made noises of discomfort more than once, clearly coming down on some of the sharper bits of my mess, and I closed my eyes and tried to stay as quiet as I could. I wasn't sure if it was dangerous, and I didn't know if it would hurt me, but I knew enough to know that I didn't want to find out. It moved about for some indeterminable amount of time. Could be an hour as much as it could be 5 minutes. But eventually, it left, and I could see the lights blink back to life as they came on again. Whatever it had been, it had killed the lights, and I made a note to watch out for that in the future. Eventually, I gave up on sleep and got up to see what was still eatable in the destroyed ruins of my cell. After finding some unopened chips, a mostly intact pizza, and some soda that I hadn't wrecked, I sat down to eat breakfast and write this. I decided to transcribe the journal into my phone, just in case something happens to it, and I've also decided to go into the bathroom again. It brought me here the first time, maybe it can take me back again. Even if it doesn't, maybe it will take me somewhere else. I've ruined all my food here during my tantrum, and if it brings me right back here, then I guess I'll have to salvage what's left and try to live as long as I can. Looking through the door now, the DGB on the other side looks very different than the one I'm in. It looks like this one when I first came through, and I'm hoping that if it doesn't take me back where I came from, then maybe it will take me somewhere that less wrecked. Wish me luck.